Okay, so this is all the code here for the navigation, what will become the navigation bar. Obviously, we're going to have to go in and change some things individually on each page, but it's just as easy to copy it all like this and then make the changes on each page. So Command X to copy, I'm sorry, not Command X, Command C to copy, and then I'll go ahead and open up the other two pages, paste that in the exact same area in those pages. You may have noticed too that the other pages, the gallery and the contact page, are not inside of a folder this time. The reason is that the gallery page has a widget on it from the Adobe's widget site, and it's a nightmare getting those to work if you have this in a different folder. So just to make it easy, since there's only 3 pages, I just left them all right out on top in the inside the main menu or inside the main folder. Now, there's two changes that we'll have to make in the navigation on each page, but I'll hold off on that for now so that the one will make more sense to you after I explain a few other things. The thing to do right now would be go out, test this in a browser, make sure that you can get to every page from every other page, and make sure that it's looking like you expect it to look at this point, which let me just show you what it looks like up to right now, and then we'll go in and we'll style it. So right now it's just floating alongside this image. So the first thing we want to do is push it down here. The reason that it's floating up here is that this image has a float on it, so what we need to do is put a clear on our navigation to get it so that it comes down here. So we're going to go into our CSS for this page. We want the main CSS, the one where we're writing stuff for it. I went ahead and coded this out, made a navigation section. So the first thing we're going to address is nav, and we're going to just clear it. So that's what the code looks like right there, just to clear that. And if we look at that in the browser, we can see now what it does is it no longer floats over here, it comes down here. And just as a reminder, if you will put these in line, then that's where you would go ahead and specify that, which I mentioned in the first video. But we're not ultimately using text here for our navigation. So the next thing that we need to do is write a style that addresses every link inside of the navigation. So we're going to use compound selector. So we're going to say, trying to get inside the nav, list items A. So what that means is every anchor tag inside of a list item inside of the nav is what we're addressing here. And what we want to do is we want to change the display to block. And the other thing that we're going to set here is the height, and we're setting the height for those buttons we made, which are all 27 pixels high. Now most demos that you see on this technique, they use like square buttons, like for example for social networking, and they set the height and the width here, which saves you having to write it for each button. But in our case, all of our buttons have a different width to make them look better, more appropriate. So we're just going to set the height here, and then we're going to have to set the width inside of the individual areas. So all right, so we have our nav. Now what we do is we're going to write. We're going to have to do basically what I'm about to do 3 times here. We're going to write for the current state of the button. Then we're going to write the hover and just the regular state of the button. So let me go ahead and put that in there and I'll walk you through it. Okay, so here's the first one. This is, and we actually haven't put this in our HTML yet, in which we'll go do that right now. But what this is saying that the link that's set to CUR for current home will have a width of 72, so that completes 39 by 72, which is 1/3 of the size of that overall image that we created. And then when we set the background position to right, it just moves it all the way over to the right and just shows 39 by 72 of it. And then of course this is the image that we're using here as our sprite image for home. So if we go into our code and we just change on the index page, we just want to go into the navigation there and we want to complete this. So what we're going to do is change that class that we already wrote of home. This is going to make it easy. We just add CUR underscore in front of it, and then when we check that out, it should be working. Okay, and so that's what it looks like when we're on the home page. Of course, if we go to a different page, we don't see any states of a button because we have just worked with the current page. And it's the depressed state of the button, which is the button all the way over to the right. So now I'll go back into Dreamweaver and I'll add the next little bits of CSS. Okay, so this is for just the regular state of the home button, which in our HTML, it's on all 3 pages. Well, it's on 2 of the pages. The third page being the home page is where you see the current, and then the hover state. So let's go ahead and take a look and see what that does. And so we see if we're on the home page, that's what we had before. If we go to the portfolio page, then there's our button showing the regular state of it. When we hover over it, the CSS moves it to the center. Same thing on the contact page. And then when we click on it, it takes us to the home page, and it looks like it's pressed in a little bit further. So starting here, I wrote the 3 states for portfolio and the 3 states for contact. Now before we can test those, we need to go into our source code and we need to set each page. So here we are in the index page. So first of all, we don't need to go to the index once we're in the index, so we can just turn this into a dummy link here. So we just put the pound sign in there, makes that dummy link, and then we already changed this to current. So these 2 are fine. So then we go into the gallery page, get down to the code for it, which now has a whole bunch of stuff in here. And then what we want to do is, since we're on the gallery page there, we'll make this the dummy link, and then we'll change our class. Just add that CUR to it, so it pulls up that CSS for current. And then this one's fine, and then we do similar to the contact page. There's the change code in the contact page. Okay, so now comes the fun part, troubleshooting if things aren't working right. I did have a misspelling here on the word portfolio, which caused that not to first, and then I noticed, oh, it's spelled wrong there too, but it matched the image name, so as long as that's up. But if we preview it right now, what we can see is that 2 of these are working somewhat fine and the contact one is not. Now we do want to get these in line, and that's easy. All we need to do is put a float on each of these. So I'll do that, and in the same time I do that, I'll troubleshoot as to why the contact only shows up on the current page. So I'm on the contact page right now, and it's been fine, but we're not getting the regular state or the. Okay, so I just had an error in here. When I changed the name, I did it twice, so it was actually images folder and then contact underscore contact. So when I changed it back to sprite contact, that worked, and then now these all have a float of left, and by all I mean all the ones that specify the background image. So the ones that those 2 for contact, these 2 for portfolio, these 2 for home. And so now it's almost there. The only thing that we have that we don't want to see anyway is this bit of text, the actual real text that's showing up here. Now there's a couple ways you can get rid of that. There is a property in CSS where you can set the visibility of something to invisible, but it's not recommended that you do that anymore because image or readers, for people that have bad eyesight, are told to ignore that. So there's actually a new technique for it where you just offset the text so that you can't see it, but the readers can still read it, the search engines can still index it. And whenever possible with CSS, you always want to do something more. Just they're all links within this nav, we can go ahead and write it on this one. We have to write it one time. So here's what we're going to write. We're doing a text indent. and we are going to indent it, and this is pretty much what everybody uses, is negative 999 M. And they're gone. They're really there, but you just can't see them. And so now we have this slight indent when you roll over and more of an indent when you go to the page. And if you didn't like that, obviously you could go into Photoshop and change it. Then some other things that you would want to do here is give this a little bit more space, and you probably want the rest of that area to be the same color. I mean, it looks a little bit silly right now with that being on red. So why don't I change that in the CSS, and I'll show you what I did. And actually, if I want to make that background color the exact same color as the button, it'd be good to go into Photoshop and find out what this was. So pay attention to what's going to happen over here. When I click on the build that we used over here in the swatches panel, which was 20% gray, it's going to put that color in here. Now when I double click on it, I can get the build of it, and down here is actually the hexadecimal value. So all I need to do is swipe across that, Command C to copy it, go back into Dreamweaver, and either just put it in here manually, or yeah, what the heck, since this is already hex, let's just copy that. We need the pound sign in front, so we'll leave that there, and then when we refresh we should have a better looking background for this. Now we'll probably want some space around it, so now we're going to have to use some padding here. And basically experimenting around, what I found out is you have to do the padding in two steps. You can get a padding above and to the left inside the nav, but then to get padding on the bottom you actually have to write it for the header itself. So let's go address that. Okay, so that's 13 pixels of padding on the left and the top. Now if you set padding on the bottom of the navigation, it just ignores it, so you have to go in and do it for the header itself. So let's do that. So this is what I did right here for the nav. Put 13 pixels in there just because that's correlated to all the space that we had around everything that we did in Photoshop. And we'll do the header. This time we'll do it this way. Go in here into the box category and padding. We just want bottom padding of 13 pixels as well. Click OK. Take a look at that, and you can see by doing it this way it leaves that image right up in the corner if that's what you wanted, and now the nav looks like it belongs in there. One thing you'd want to do, I've seen some code using, and since all of these images are background image, not placed image, default background images to rest, there's possibly some errors that could cause a problem with. So what you might want to do is grab every one of these, go into the code for it, and just go into background, and where it says background repeat, just select no repeat, click on OK, and it'll just add to the at this point we just copy this and paste it to everyone that mentions the image location. So there should be 6 of those, and that's it. Oh, you know what, actually let me just show you something significant here, and that is the fact that when we do resize the browser window now, if it gets too small, well actually it's not, but take my word for it, if there was an extra button right here and we could get it, you know, small enough, what it would do then is it would just kick that button down here. You know, not that that looks pretty having 3 buttons on top, 1 on the bottom, but it was certainly much prettier than what we started with when we just had the CSS and no images.